Howdy, y'alls. I'm going to speak real fast because they just told me if we don't keep it under 15 minutes, they're just going to cut it off. So if you have questions, you can always ping me on LinkedIn. So let's just get right into it. This is a candidate-facing talk. Obviously, this is career day. So this is a guide for you as the candidate. If you are someone who's hiring, I hope that this helps you get into that mindset too. What do you do? I don't know about y'all's, but where I come from, this is like one of the first questions that we get asked when we meet somebody, right? What's your name? What do you do? So I think this adds a lot of pressure, right? Not only do we need a job to put food on the table, but kind of defines how people see us, right? People want to label us. Our job becomes our identity in a great sense. So I get that there's a lot of pressure, but I hope that by the end of this, we realize, hey, it's not just about your resume that's important. There's other things that you can bring to the table. So who am I? Well, I'm a human, but in the context of this, I think it's important to highlight some of the career things I've done. I'm the recruiter at Rovio. I'm the only one. Before that, I was the Halo guy. So I was recruiting for Halo. And before that, I was a headhunter, which represented several of these game clients, as you can see here. And then before that, I worked at theme parks. So I put on a costume and ran around and messed with people. And I was able to take that experience, which is completely irrelevant to games, and make a career in gaming. So I will share that story at the end, and hopefully you guys can see that anyone can have a career in gaming. You just got to find a creative way to do it. Dropping the stats here. There's enough work for you. There are more open positions than can be possibly filled. There's this paradox going on where companies are complaining that they can't find enough talent, and talent's complaining that they can't find the right work. But if you look here, what the gaming industry is like 150 billion. Recruiting industry is almost 3 times that, right? So what that says to us is not that there's a shortage either direction. It's just a matter of distribution. We don't know how to distribute the talent across all those jobs. So there's a $400 billion industry that simply just acts as middlemen to find people work. And in a perfect world, I wouldn't even have a job doing this. But because of how crazy and inefficient hiring is, hey, I can have a career doing this. So hopefully that I could point out some of those things that you might be doing wrong, the company's doing wrong, and what we can do about that. Why it's hard to get hired. So I think this meme explains it all. Companies expect a new hire to just be a complete package. They can order off a menu. They're creating these unrealistic job descriptions, unrealistic expectations, and we're not considering that people are always learning and always growing, right? Myths. Maybe it's a little off topic, but I have a captive audience here, so I want to crush this. Some things that I see a lot online and in my conversations that I just want to get out of people's heads. First of all, a robot rejecting your application. There's no such thing. Stop listening to LinkedIn influencers that say you need to, pay me or consult with me to make your resume more keyword friendly. It doesn't matter. A human is looking at those things. It's not a robot. The other myth I want to squish here is that it's not about convincing a recruiter to give you a chance or not, or give you a job or not. Recruiters don't have any power to make decisions. All they're doing is they're taking qualifications from a hiring manager and they're going and finding those people. And very, very rarely is a recruiter going to have anything to do with an entry-level position because they don't need a recruiter for that. People are going to apply on their own. So if you're talking with a recruiter and they're spending the time to talk with you and help you and give you advice, There's nothing you can say or do that's going to change their mind if you don't have the right experience. That's it. So just be appreciative, come back in a year, whatever. Ask them for feedback, and if they can, they'll give it to you. Cover letters, you don't need to do them, so just skip them. No one reads them anyway. If there's a requirement in an application system to put one, make it super, super brief, point out some highlights, but by and large, you don't need it. And the last myth is you don't need to wait for someone else to give you a chance. There's no big break that, okay, well, once I work at this company, then I can start. You can always start working on things. It's what I did. I was unemployed for a long time, and I didn't get my first game job until I started making things on my own. So here are some things on the other side, how people are making decisions about you, whether you're going to get the job or not. And these things, in my opinion, are negative. They are not the right way to be making these decisions. And I try to fight this idea that we need to do this, but they happen anyway. I'll talk about at the end what to do about it, but right now I'm just going to reveal it. A lot of hiring managers will decide to interview based on pedigree, meaning they're really busy. They don't want to read through a resume. They don't want to have to guess if you're going to be good or not. So they're just going to look at, do they recognize a company or not? Do they recognize a project? So if you've worked at a big company, then you're more likely to get an interview. That seems pretty obvious, but on the other side of it, it's not a good way to choose, because the bigger of a company you work at, the bigger the team there is, and the more likely your impact is really small. So if you're working at small companies, you don't have that pedigree, highlight what your accomplishments have been, right? How you've brought this to here, right? Culture fit, you might get rejected for culture fit, which is basically just a way to discriminate based on your personality. So this, I wouldn't worry too much about doing anything about. Kind of like dating in a weird way. Interviewing is kind of like dating. You want to be your authentic self. And if it's not a match, it's not a match, right? Hiring managers also, they want to hire somebody that's already done the thing that they're hiring for. They don't leave room for growth. So if you see a job description, try to see if you can kind of throw in information about, I've already done that thing. The last thing is the number of years. Some hiring managers are sticklers about number of years. Sometimes there's a legal reason, but most of the time there's not. I would say ignore the number of years on a job description, apply anyway, because sometimes you will get the job. Last thing, I'm going to take everyone down a peg here. I'm going to be pretty brutal and hopefully lift your spirits back up at the end. These are some hard truths that I had to learn personally, and I had to change my mentality around in order to get my first job. First thing is, you're not entitled to a job. Sorry, it doesn't matter how much time and money you've spent on your education. It doesn't matter how much you want it. You're not entitled to it. If you live in a capitalist society, you don't automatically get one. Especially in a competitive industry like games. It's a privilege. It really is a privilege to work in this industry. So look at it that way and look at how you can provide value. No one cares if you say you're a hard worker or a fast learner or you're really passionate about it or it's your dream company. No one cares at all, because everyone says that. And that's not a reason to hire somebody. People get hired because they provide value. They provide specific measurable value. Your personal hardship. People may care as a human being, but no one is going to hire you out of pity. Doesn't matter what your financial, health, family, whatever situation is. Business is not a charity, right? Let's talk about the dating example again. You want to come into this situation with your best face forward. You want to be authentic and genuine, so you know it's a match. But you come in here really desperate, complaining about how everything's hard for you, and you just want to take things from people. All around the board, people are usually repulsed by that sort of thing. So they want to hire an asset, not a liability. So leave that stuff outside of the interview process. And the less experience you have, the more at risk you are. So you have to be able to communicate why the risk to hire you or work with you is as little as possible. Okay, what are we going to do about this? Let's talk about working with recruiters and how they're motivated and how you can kind of know what to do. These are 3 types of recruiting HR type people you might work with. The first is one that wants you to take a contract gig. This basically means they want you to work hourly for a fixed term, perhaps. I would pretty much, as a rule, avoid these entirely, because their interest is the complete opposite of your best interest. If they're trying to place you on a contract, what they're doing is they want to get you in as cheaply as possible. Why? Because say you get a job for 25 euros an hour, they're going to charge the company 50 euros an hour. And if you want to raise, that's going to cut into their margin. So they're incentivized to get you the worst deal possible. So I would avoid these like a plague. And if you're super, super desperate, just know that this is what they're doing. An agency recruiter who's giving you a perm job is a little different. They're motivated to get a high commission, which is based on the salary they get for you. So they're actually going to fight to get you a higher salary. So these people will have your best interest in mind, at least for the short term. And as long as you stay for 90 days, which is usually their guarantee, they'll get that commission. But they're not motivated for you to stay at that company a long time. In fact, they kind of want you to leave so they can place you at another company in 2 years. The last thing is the internal recruiter, which is what I am, or the HR, or the hiring manager you're working with directly. These people's motivations, at least mechanically, are the most aligned with what is good for you. Because what we want is we want you to stay for a long time. I'm not incentivized with any commissions for you to take the job. I don't care if you take the job or not. What I care about is that you stay once you're there. And then talent pooling is, hey, I'm going to talk with people ahead of time before the roles are open to make that connection. So internal recruiters, if they have time, they may be willing to have a chat with you even online just to make that connection. So use them as a resource. Hiring managers are motivated. It's pretty simple. The role is open for a reason. Find out what the reason is. You're either making their job easier, you're making them look good in some way, or you're pushing the needle, like you're bringing in more money, or you're, hitting KPIs better or whatever. All right. This is the story I promised you. This is where I came from. This was my resume. So I would send this out to get acting jobs. This is not relevant to games. I studied acting. I worked in theme parks for many years, and then I knew that it wasn't for me after all. I wanted to get into games. So I was unemployed for over a year and a half, applying to every single games company I could, rejection after ghost after rejection after ghost. And it wasn't until I started accepting responsibility for myself, stopped blaming other people, stopped blaming the industry, that I found a way to position myself. What I ended up doing is I made this setup up myself. What I ended up doing was I identified what value I had to bring. So I identified what I was good at. As an actor, I understand how people are motivated. I can get inside people's heads. So that's an asset. What I had a deficiency in is I didn't know how games were made. So I had to go on YouTube and I had to learn about design and art and everything. Then I volunteered my time to create an Android game out of some dude's garage. And this is the screenshot here. I think it had 17 downloads. It didn't do very well. And the last thing is I identified a purpose. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Why is it important? And the how could be a job. It could be a nonprofit. It could be a community that you're involved in. If you know what your purpose is, I don't mean passion. Passion is self-serving. It's self-satisfying. Purpose means you are going to do this purpose no matter what your job is. If you can go in there and you know what your purpose is, I guarantee you that energy is going to be infectious and people are going to want to work with you. Because at the end of the day, we want to hire people that are going to create success around us, and we're going to want to ride that energy. All right, I got to wrap this up real fast. I think I'm already over time. Here's my script. Once you've got some experience under your belt, whether you're making your own game from home, you're active in a community, even if you've never had a full-time job in this, collect those experiences, find, like I said in the other one, find how to pitch what you're good at, how to cover up your deficiencies, and find a small company. Ignore the big ones because they're going to ignore you at this point. Go on gamedevmap.com or some other place that has listings of small companies and studios in your area. And just say two things. You reach out directly to them and you say what interested you about their work and why you would be an asset. Keep it 2, 3, 4 sentences at most. Try to anticipate what they could want. And if you need to volunteer for them for a little bit, work an hour a week just to show what you can do that. But this is a way, by being proactive and showing that you're doing stuff in your off time, they're going to see you as less of a risk and they're not going to have to hold your hand. Last thing I'll say is if you are a hiring manager now, or when you become a hiring manager, remember that those people with that big pedigree, they've worked at the big companies, they're not always going to be that much exponentially better than someone who hasn't. They're just being paid more because they're easy to read on a resume. Constantly be talking to people, constantly be hiring or at least chatting with people for potentials, and look for unique stories, because you never know how someone's unique background might actually affect the bottom line or affect some innovation in your company. Thank you very much.